Hi there, and welcome back to the Energy Sector Heroes podcast. My name is Michelle Fraser, and every week I will speak with incredible people who share their lessons, experiences, and stories from their time spent in the energy sector. Hi there, and welcome back again to this week's episode. If you're new to the show, then please take a second to subscribe and even consider sharing the show with just one other person. This week I am joined by Stephen McHugh. Stephen is the director at MCQ HSC Consulting and also the vice president of operational excellence in a startup called Store CO2. Stephen, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, great. Thanks very much. My name is Steve McHugh. As Michelle mentioned, I have my own consultancy company now, having retired from Chevron in 2019, and which is essentially just before COVID. And I have also, for the past couple of years, been involved in a carbon transport company called Store CO2, where I'm VP for operational excellence. And although we're not operational yet in this company, we are looking to provide a shipping solution to the carbon capture and storage supply chain.
That sounds amazing, because carbon capture is quite the popularity just now.
It is. But my involvement with it goes back a long way, actually. And I do get annoyed at times when people say, well, critics of the oil and gas industry say, well, you've known about this for a long time. And I would say, yes, but so have you, because the Rio Environmental Conference was in 1992 and climate change was on the agenda at that conference. And I was working with BP in Aberdeen at the time. And I got involved in a project on the Clare field. It was called Clare Pilot Options. The Clare field had not been developed. And we're looking at pilot options. And in those pilot options, as a result of the Rio conference, we were looking at zero emission concepts for the development of the field, of which kind of zero flaring and zero venting was a key part. And so my involvement in carbon capture and storage goes back right the way to 93. So that's 30 years. And then latterly I was in a bit kind of after that, around the period of about 1998, 99, I headed up a technology project in BP called Green Operations. And we were looking at carbon capture utilization in a big way as part of the overall kind of what we call green operations, being a green operator. And then when in 1999, I left BP. It was around the kind of $9 a barrel of oil and all this stuff. And I set up a consulting company called Climate Change Transport and Trading, trying to capitalize on what was the kind of growing awareness around climate change and the need to do something and the whole kind of need for more information. But I couldn't monetize the company. I could not get sufficient interest in order to develop a business that would be, that would essentially pay my bills, because it was all voluntary at that point. There was no real drivers. Companies were not there was not sufficient kind of driver for companies to really make a change. So it was there as an interest and it was there as a kind of option, but it was difficult to see, what the monetary business model was going to look like. Mm-hmm. And then I go back into the oil industry. I joined Texaco, and then Texaco got taken over by Chevron. I was 20 years with Chevron, and now we're in a situation where, as you say, carbon capture and storage is not only kind of flavor of the month, it's actually a necessary lever that's going to have to be pulled in order for the UK to meet its net zero commitments. There's no other way no other practical pathway of getting there. No. And so it's really great to be back involved in this issue.
But I can't believe that everybody knew about carbon capture for such a long time, but no one did anything about it.
So everybody was aware of the climate change issue. Everybody was aware. So there's an awareness of the climate change issue. There was awareness of the kind of rise in CO2 concentrations, and there was awareness that something would have to be done at some point. But there was no overall concerted effort on behalf of governments or regulators, either in any country really. So it was no action was taken. I remember I used to I was a HSE manager in for a large point of my time in Chevron, and we used to come up with so I covered energy efficiency, and we would come up with energy efficiency projects to go for the capital funding. So every year we'd have a capital funding round, and every year we in the HSE team, alliance with some of the operating groups, would submit energy efficiency projects as part of that kind of for consideration.
Mm-hmm.
But we could never attract the capital because even though these projects were profitable, the rate of return on these projects was in the single figures. You're looking at 5-6% MPV. Oh, sorry, 5 or 6% rate of return. And the problem was, didn't make the hurdles. Or any oil company or oil and gas company at the time would be looking at rates of return in the kind of 20% or even higher as being the hurdle for project consideration. So these energy efficiency projects never flew. They're always kept in the project queue, but they never kind of rose to the top. And so, and that was kind of, it wasn't just in the oil and gas industry. This is industry wide, and this is commercial wide, and this is government wide as well. So as a government, you think, well, we've had the odd kind of efforts with regards to home insulation and things like this, but they've never really been that concerted. And now, there's going to have to be a lot more work done in these areas, because one of the main things that you can do with regards to carbon emissions is stop using energy or reduce your energy requirements. And things like home insulation is another energy efficiency project can go a long way to that, and can be positive in terms of the kind of overall rate, return to the company and to the country. Yeah, so been a long time of kind of like involved centrally, involved peripherally in various aspects of this whole kind of climate change, carbon management issue.
So why did the carbon change projects not get more? Were not prioritised? Because I thought if they've known about it for quite a while, it's just
because they were uneconomic. Because it was uneconomic. So what did get prioritised is things like flare reduction and flare elimination. So we initially moved from venting. So as part of the overall kind of environmental push, a lot more emphasis was paid to reduction of emissions and reduction of atmospheric emissions as a whole. And so then you started getting drivers on reduction of emissions, so venting emissions, which obviously if you're venting, you're putting methane straight into the atmosphere. So reduction in venting, so you collected all your vents and low pressure collection systems, which will then get sent up to the flares. And then what was being addressed was the flare systems, and can you have no flaring during normal operations, so your flares kept for upset conditions. And so quite a lot of work was done on flare reduction and flare reduction kind of globally, but by big companies. And then there's more traction's been gained with regards to carbon capture. So why another way to approach this is, why didn't anything happen? Nothing happened because the governments didn't legislate for nothing happening. Why didn't governments legislate for nothing happening? Because the people were not interested and nobody was driving it. That's another way of looking at it. Yeah, that there was not the public pressure for the government to legislate for these kind of activities to take place in order to provide the lever to get it done. And so even now in parts of the world, you can go and find pretty much uncontrolled venting and uncontrolled flaring. And that's one of the big beefs that I have with regards to whittling down the oil and gas industry in the UK, is that we haven't addressed the need for energy, so we're still going to need, and you start, the barrels that you import are going to be, or the barrels that are now on the market, will take the place of the UK barrels that are no longer on the market or will no longer be on the market. Those barrels come with higher, often hidden emissions.
Okay. I do agree with you. I do. And it's amazing how it wasn't driven before until now, considering it's quite an important issue. It's quite an important issue now.
Yeah, and yes, absolutely. And you can see from the actions of the governments at these various COPs and heads of government meetings how difficult it has been to get governments to sign up, then governments to sign up to targets that actually have penalties associated with them, and then to get them to actually put in plans in place that's actually going to take them to meet those targets. It's and as a politician, I can understand the politics of this, because you as a politician, you're thinking 5 years maximum, really, because you've got to get elected in 5 years' time. You've got to get re-elected in 5 years' time, and this is a 20, 30, 40-year program, and so how does that fit in? And people say, well, we're not spending the money now so that we might missing our 2050 target. How many of today's politicians really have that at the top of their mind?
No.
That we might miss a target in 25 years, So
No, they don't. Even though I think they say that they do, I still think they don't.
well, I think it's difficult. They're in a difficult place as well, and they're ultimately accountable to the people who elect them, and so there's a whole issue around public sentiment, public awareness, how much does the public want this, and I don't think any government has actually been, for good reasons, they've not been transparent about the fact that all this is going to cost a lot of money. Why do we use oil? Why do we use hydrocarbons? Why do we use oil and gas? Well, because they provide an absolutely fantastically efficient, energy dense resource that we can create low-cost energy from, that has helped billions of people to rise out of poverty and has contributed to the kind of global wealth. And to say that you're going to somehow wean people off that completely in 20 years at zero cost is completely disingenuous. The cost hurdle will be quite significant. And so, having not been clear with people, is the government really going to then incur that cost hurdle, or are they going to kick it down the road a little bit? And I think it will be the latter. So I think these things are going to happen, but it's going to get kicked down the road a little bit, and maybe people are waiting for some kind of whiz-bang technology to come along that's going to deliver it all at a much lower cost than what we're looking at present. But I can't see that happening.
Do you not?
So,
why do you not see that happening?
Because I don't think the technology. If you look at one of the main costs for all these carbons is carbon capture, and the cost of carbon capture, and people have spent a lot of time looking at carbon capture, because we're essentially using amine. We're using amine plants, so using wet chemistry amine plants, which have been used for 50 odd years for capture. When you've got depropanizers, debutanizers, whatever, they've been used for a long period of time, and we seem to be fixed on that technology. There doesn't seem to be a radical way in which we can move away from that. So I think I can't see within the context of meeting, of decarbonising for a 2030 target or a 2050 target. I don't think we're going to have in this space a kind of technology miracle, to be quite honest. I think we're going to need to, because if we're going to need to implement at the bigger scale that's ever been implemented a number of existing technologies in order to get us along the path to meeting these net zero goals.
So do you not think that the carbon capture is going to be the answer for everything then? Do you think we'll need other technologies to run alongside it?
We will definitely need new technologies. Definitely, I'm a big proponent of nuclear technology. I think the way that the whole nuclear question is another one that's been punted down the road until it's almost too late with regards to building of new nuclear plants, as the old ones were becoming almost obsolete. So I think there's a real, we need everything, to be quite honest. So I think there's a real role for nuclear in this mix. I think there's also obviously offshore wind. I'm more sceptical on onshore wind because of the loss of amenity and the visual impacts, and the monster pylons that would be required to take onshore wind down south. So essentially you see an industrialisation of the countryside in northeast Scotland to provide electricity to the south of England. So I do have some concerns about that. But I think offshore wind in particular, I think interesting stuff on tidal and wave, and if we can get those technologies to move along and contribute. So I do believe that all of these things are going to be required, and carbon capture and storage is one of those levers, and will have to be pulled. And does provide a pathway for the UK to meet its net zero goals. So that's why I'm involved in it. I see really, really exciting times ahead. And then you get into the whole thing about geology. I mean, we're blessed with the geology in the North Sea, but it's ideal. A number of these reservoirs are ideal for the storage of carbon. So essentially, you put it back in the same hole in the ground. Well, obviously, it's not a hole in the ground, but you put it back in the same place where it come from, with the same cat rocks and everything else. And we have the technology to do that. In doing that, we would defer the decommission and abandonment of a number of facilities in the North Sea because they could be repurposed for carbon capture and storage. I think there's a methodology there to use the old well bores. So that in itself as a double positive, because you're deferring the decommission and abandonment, so you're deferring the costs of that, which large part of those costs fall to the taxpayer, and you also drive a business on carbon capture and storage, where the UK continental shelf has enough volume there to be able to take pretty much the whole of Europe's carbon emissions. So you can foresee an international business with carbon collection from Holland and northern Germany, Denmark being transported to injection in UK reservoirs.
Okay, so do you think that technology will maybe stop decommissioning activities then, or delay it?
Yeah, I think for a number of fields it will delay decommissioning. Yeah, has the potential to delay decommissioning because you can use minimal aspects of the existing platforms to run your carbon capture and storage activities.
But that would be amazing, though. That would save the companies a lot of money.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. So that's what some of the aspects that we're involved in with some of the discussions that we're having with our partners.
Okay, so being involved in a startup, it's quite challenging. What What has been your biggest challenge to date?
Finance. Finance is the biggest challenge because we have a great technology, we have some patented technology, we have a clear path to what we can do, and the low cost provision of a service to dispose of carbon. We have progressed the engineering to a reasonable extent, but most of this work has been self-funded, and so we are looking for financial investment of one form or another to be able to drive this forward, such that we can get to a point where we can then instigate a number of projects. We have people lined up who would like to work with us, but it's around about getting the right level of finance with the right conditions, such that we can move forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But how would you go over that though?
Well, there's a number of people involved, and as I mentioned, I'm on the operational excellence side, so I'm more operational, looking at the kind of nuts and bolts of getting this going and tying it all up, and the kind of regulations and the permits and the certifications and everything that would be required. We have people involved who are much more financially minded by myself, and these people have the contacts with the various kind of financial investing companies, and they are looking at the suite of opportunities.
Okay. As you mentioned before, you're Vice President of Operational Excellence. What does that even involve? Because it sounds exciting, I have to say.
So I worked in operational excellence in Chevron, and in the Chevron context, you're looking at health, safety, environment, reliability, and efficiency. So you're looking at all kinds of things to do with keeping essentially the hydrocarbons in the pipe, keeping people safe, and keeping the facilities up and running in the most efficient manner possible. So that in a broad context is operational excellence. But then, you in some places you would have quality, so the quality control and supply chain quality comes into it, and also security. And then you're looking at all the kind of regulatory aspects and certifications and competencies and all that kind of stuff. So that's basically what I've done. That's what I've done for the latter part of my career, and that's what I'm kind of applying here.
Mm-hmm.
Plus all the knowledge that I brought from my decades kind of involvement in the kind of carbon issue from one point or another.
Okay, so that sounds amazing. So, what is the next steps in for you with the startup company?
The next step is to get a project out of the gate. So to get a project going that allows us to fully demonstrate in practice what we're about, and we're close to doing that. And once we get that going, then we believe that we will be will be a lot more attractive to back-in companies or back-in entities, financial entities, because we will have demonstrated in practice that the technology that we have works. And so that's our main focus. Project number one out of the gate.
Okay, but are you close to getting to do that though?
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
But then that would be exciting though. It would be hard.
Oh yeah, fantastically exciting. Yeah, fantastically exciting. Yeah, and we are complementary to these big kind of what they call track projects, like the hub and cluster, track 1, track 2. That we're complementary to them because they're looking at big industrial clusters with millions of tons of carbon dioxide to be sequestered, and so they're looking at a different scale to us. We're we're an order of magnitude down, and we're looking at people who will probably never be pipeline connected to a cluster, and they need another outlet for the CO2 emissions that they generate, and that outlet we believe will be shipping, and so that's where we come in.
Okay.
And that's about 50% of the total emissions of the UK are in that situation.
Are they?
Yeah.
Why is that then?
Well, because the hubs and the clusters are focusing on specific industrial areas, and there's a lot of plants out there that are not close to existing pipelines and will not be connected. It's unforeseeable that they will be connected to these hubs and clusters within a time frame that meets the commitments they're going to have to make.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if you imagine, you've got plants dotted all over the country, yeah, and there's trying to aggregate those into industrial hub and clusters is not really a starter.
No, it's not. I don't think so either. No.
So that's where we come in, because we're offering a solution to that problem.
And that's amazing as well.
Mm.
That is
So
amazing.
yeah, so it's all exciting, yeah, and that's the kind of dream out there is all this flies, and we get moving on it. And in the meantime, I pick up a little bit of money's doing my HSE consulting, and that just ticks over.
Okay, so your HSC consulting, that is totally different to what you're doing at the carbon capture.
Yeah. This is based on it's largely what I'm doing is largely offering a service with regards to human factors, human performance. So looking at coaching, looking at error traps, looking at how getting into the kind of mindsets of the workforce, and how you can approach the safety issue from a different angle from you just follow the procedure. You follow the procedure X, Y, Z, and people still have accidents, people still get hurt, and unfortunately, very occasionally, people will die. And then, so the traditional approach is, this procedure was not followed, that procedure wasn't followed, they made this mistake, and such like. And then if you approach it of why does an experienced person who is well qualified at the job, why have they made that mistake? Or did they even why was that mistake made? Was it even their fault? Or is there something more systematic, more underneath, that's created an error trap that has led to that mistake being made, or that error being made? And then, so you then approach on the human performance side, is that you approach on the basis that people will make mistakes. Even the most experienced, most expertise person will still make mistakes. And so then you start getting into the psychology around paying attention and brain patterns, and the brain defaulting to a kind of autopilot, and then around the possibility of, or have you made those mistakes more probable by the way that the control room's set up, or the lighting in that room, or the distractions on the drill floor, or this, that, and the other. And so you approach it more holistically from a kind of, from a human performance aspect, and that's the whole point of it. Yeah, and I think that's it's a much more rounded approach to safety management than a kind of a bit more directive. Here's the procedure, follow the procedure, daddy da, and that's it. Very hard hat and such.
Okay, but do you think that who makes the most mistakes, human errors? Is it the most experienced people, or is it the newer, less experienced people?
Right. So in a lot of the work that I did and a lot of the kind of industry data that we looked at, it is generally the people who've got a bit more experience. So we would be looking at the kind of maybe the 10 to 15 year experienced person. The person who's got sufficient levels of experience that they believe that they know all of the risks associated with the task that they're doing. And therefore, they maybe don't have to read the procedure this time, or whatever the reason is. And then they find themselves in a situation where it's an unusual situation for one reason or another, or something's happened that's slightly different, and an error of judgment occurs. So the new people, because of in our experience, the new people with the level of, if they get the kind of level of supervision and coaching and buddy systems that most people would provide for new people, and the fact that they're kind of, because they're new, they're kind of alert all the time. Yeah, they've got this sense of vulnerability about what they're doing. Those people are not the ones who seem to be getting hurt. It's the people who've lost that sense of vulnerability for one reason or another.
Yeah, I agree as well. I did hear that it's the people that have been maybe on the same job for years and years that they become complacent. But I think that's just normal. I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly, and that's and that's where human performance comes in, because it does become normal. Yeah, and so the classic one that we always use in our kind of discussions is driving home. So driving is one of the most dangerous things that you can do in the
mm,
oil industry. Yeah,
mhm,
but we can all drive home on autopilot. We get home and we don't really know how we got there. We can't remember the journey, and we all do it because our brain defaults into a mode that requires less energy. A fully alert brain is a real we're talking about energy earlier. A fully alert brain is a real consumer of energy. It requires
mhm,
a lot of energy to be fully alert all of the time. And
mhm,
so the human brain, it will default to kind of automatic mode if it feels that it can. And so if you're going through a routine task, or such as driving home, yeah, but it could
mhm,
be driving home, or it could be welding, or it could be moving pipe on the drill floor, yeah. If you
mhm,
do, as you say, you're doing it time and time again, yeah, and then you're maintaining the level of focus that the job requires.
mhm,
And so then if you start taking that into account, then can you design the job to take that into account such that we can still do safely, even if people are kind of a little bit more in this kind of automatic mode. Yeah, and that's why you think of people, people who sometimes, you go ashore and you go straight into night shift, or you're moving on to night shift during your time offshore. So you've got the night shift, you did a repetitive job, it's down, it's dark, and you're tired because your body clock's not changed, and such like that. So you can understand the kind of the risks have now gone up in terms of what could happen. And so, but if you've got an offshore leadership team that's fully aware and fully bought into these kind of things, then we can start managing the activities to kind of take them into account.
mhm,
Because back I started in the oil and gas industry in 1988. I started in London with BP 1988, April 88, 3 months before the Piper Alpha. And then, we had came up to Aberdeen in 1990 with the whole thing around safety case development. But in terms of individual mistakes, back then, and then when I went to work overseas, somebody made a mistake, and it didn't matter if they were, a 20-year person or whatever, termination. We'll do the investigation. We'll find this person's made a mistake. We're going to fire them. and that happened a lot. And I think now, when you've got a more greater understanding of the kind of human factors, of human performance, maybe you've got a just culture system in place, looking at, was it really a systematic issue here and not an individual error? Would somebody else have done that if in their place? Would they have made the same decision, the same action? There's a much more holistic approach to things now, and I think we're better for that.
I think so too. I do. I think HSE is quite one of the most important aspects of any operation.
No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I've been fortunate to work with some fantastic people, and you talk to the OIMs, what's their business? Their business is to safely produce oil and gas. Yeah, it's in almost, it's the first word in their kind of job description, really. Safely produce oil and gas. And I'm really proud of the oil and gas industry in terms of the way that I believe that we've led safety culture in industry. I think you go to other industries, and it can be a bit of an eye opener in terms of how little attention is paid to safety, how little importance it's given. And we see this. I worked in Australia for 4 years. I was the HSE manager on the Wheatstone LNG project. So that's that Chevron LNG project, massive project, $30 billion FID. We were going to employ thousands of people, most of whom were going to be, a large proportion of them were going to be coming from the Australian mining industry. And the level of safety awareness was pretty low to start off with, to be quite honest. I mean, the Australian mining industry has levels of safety performance that would blow your mind, just how accepting it is of people getting hurt. And then you compare to coming into the oil and gas industry, and we wouldn't accept the injury levels an order of magnitude less than what they were experienced to. And so we have a huge activity around building up of safety awareness, safety capability, safety thinking, and there's a huge change coming into the oil industry. And I think a lot of people, they're coming into the oil and gas industry the first time. I think they continue to be surprised at how much emphasis is placed on being safe, which I think is a great thing, absolutely great thing. I remember I used to go, a few years ago, I'd see people say, what was your job? What's your job title? What do you do? On health, safety, environment. And their idea of safety is like watching Jeremy Clarkson on TV poo-pooing, the council safety officers and all this, yeah. And they're, safety, you're the safety guy, got to wear my high-vis jacket, have I, and stuff like that. And I say, no, what you've got to do is avoid being killed on an offshore platform where you're living next to high-pressure gas and oil, and where if anything goes wrong, the entire thing will blow up, and you'll die along with hundreds of other people. And in the mind of the general public, they just don't get that. They just can't see it yet. So safety to them is some busybody stopping them going up a ladder without holding on and stuff like that. Where the most they might do is kind of fall off and break an arm. And I think that the consistency in the oil and gas industry around safety is good business. It really does add to the bottom line. If you get it wrong, it could be the end of you as a company, and the criticality of it, I think has driven laudable. It's been very laudable, and it continues to be. And one thing is, I always face this in safety is that, well, how many avoidable incidents have there been? So all this work that you do on safety and the whole kind of safety culture and everything that goes along with it, and the efforts that apply to it, and doing it time and time again, it's people still, you obviously still people still look at the kind of incidents and injury rates. Hopefully, they're getting a little bit away from that kind of narrow focus. But it's almost like how much have we saved? Yeah, how much have we saved in terms of the avoidable incidents and the avoidable deaths? And if you think of those over the years, industry wide, there's a lot of families that are still together because of the attention to safety that's paid in our industry. And I'm really proud of that. And that's something that really used to drive me, to come into work every day.
Yeah, it is. Because I remember when I used to work abroad, in some projects, I think the HSC can be really, really not really enforced in some countries. It's quite ridiculous, actually, how dangerous some of the sites that I've worked on have been.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Um, you know, I used to, because I started off in environmental as I got into the oil industry. I'm actually a biologist. I studied environmental biology at university, and then worked as an environmental consultant for a while before I joined the oil industry, looking at things like contaminated land and remediation and
Mm.
closure of chemical plants and cleanup of land and stuff. That's how I started.
Mm.
And environmental side, face the same kind of thing of very varying degrees of acceptance of the need for it and what you're doing, and why we're spending this much every year on oil spill equipment and all the drills and everything that goes with it. Why are we spending $1 million a year on oil spills when we haven't had an oil spill for, since God knows when, kind of thing. And then something like Valdez happens, which happened when not long after I joined the oil and gas industry. You get Exxon Valdez happens, and then it's and I don't know if you remember Exxon Valdez, but the organization that got the greatest kind of feedback in Exxon Valdez for the work that they did in preventing greater pollution was the Oil Spill Response Centre in Southampton, which became OSRL, Oil Spill Response Limited. Those are the guys. Because they had everything set up. It was all on to get onto containerized, onto planes, out to Alaska. Even though they're coming from Southampton, they were the first on the ground, the first coordinated oil spill response. And why do you pay monies to be part of that club? Because at some point you may need them. And it was so successful that the United States government then set up 3 equivalent oil spill response centers in the US. One up in Alaska, I think one on the Gulf Coast and one on the East Coast, just because of the value of it. And so be prepared, be ready.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I do agree with that. So what do you prefer working in? Do you prefer working in HSC or do you prefer working in the carbon capture?
I prefer both. I really like at the moment, because I am doing both. Both of them are part time. So so when I retired from Chevron in 2019, I wasn't doing any carbon capture at that point. I set up my consulting company, and I had a few leads, and it all looked pretty good. And then COVID happened, yeah. So COVID happened, like March 2020. Well, not only COVID, but you remember the oil price actually went negative. So we had negative oil price for a while. And so all of that was just, all of my leads and everything just went completely stone dead. And so for a couple of years, nothing was happening. And then I got involved in 2 years ago, 2022, with the Store CO2 startup business of in the early days, and we were getting going with the concepts and the design and the patents and all that kind of stuff. And then as we came out of COVID and the drilling industry started to pick up and rig utilization picked up and everything else, and a number of people had left the industry, so there was a bit more demand for kind of consultancy input, my consulting company started getting going as well.
Yeah.
So it's been real interesting, been really great to have both things going on. You know, both of them a part-time basis. If the carbon capture, the carbon capture, transport and storage business really takes off, then I can imagine that becoming the kind of the dominant activity. But right now I'm doing both.
Yeah. So, what advice do you have for our younger graduates on maybe starting a startup or even starting up a consultancy business by yourself?
Well, I think in terms of starting consultancy, I think, well, a lot of people start consultancies, yeah. So a lot of people do what I do is, you know, you take early retirement or you're getting up towards the, you know, a certain point and you go off and become a consultant. Essentially, you're reliant upon previous contacts and word of mouth. So my advice to anyone is, at any stage of your career, network. Don't passively network, actively network. Maintain those contacts. Maintain them, actively maintain them. You know, so whether it's a Christmas card or the occasional email or whatever it is, keep a broad swath of contacts that if you at some point do decide to you with your kind of individual endeavors. So I think that's important, and it's important that, you know, within a company as well as, you know, externally. I think, you know, there's a, you know, be an active networker. I think is for anybody starting out in the industry, I would encourage that. Cross discipline as well. You know, don't restrict yourselves to your own discipline. Be as cross disciplinary as you can. It's amazing how much of a learning university a company can be if you're prepared to network and listen. So if you network with the finance guys or the supply chain guys, and you just, you know, you could be just having a coffee or you're sitting together at lunch and you let them talk about what they're doing and how they're working. You know, you think of all of that free information and free tutoring you're getting compared to how much it would cost you if you went to a seminar or a conference or whatever. Yeah, there's a whole wealth of expertise around you, and you can use that to help yourself to grow. That's why I remember having subsidised lunches in the workplace, or even back in the old days, used to get free lunches. Is the business value of it, I think, is undeniable. Yeah, instead of people wandering off on their own and going to get a meal or a meal deal, or go for, you know, they're just wandering off on their own. To have people together, sitting together, chatting, whether it's, even if it's passive talk, it's generally going to be work related to one form or another. And even if it's not work related, they're still building relationships with work colleagues. All of that develops better business outcomes. It's kind of it's which I think is, you know, when you get into, like, you know, work from home systems and how many, you know, how does that play out? And I think you could lose, to me, you're going to lose something. Yeah, I think the company's going to lose something, and I think the individuals are going to lose something of that kind of networking induced growth, personal growth, by the fact that they're working from home, you know, maybe 60%, 80% of the time.
I think so. Do you think that working from home is going to stop networking then?
Well, I think it's going to make it more difficult. I think it must do, because if you're in the office, if you're in an office obviously if you're working offshore, you know, you work offshore. But if you're in an onshore position and you're working onshore, largely you'd probably be in an office. Because if you're in a warehouse or something, you need to be in location. But if you're in an office and you're not bumping into people, going to the cafe, or, you know, to the coffee machine, or just seeing them down the corridor, or having lunch together, or just passing by, or overhearing somebody talking about something that you can pick up on, your networking actually will it's going to suffer. And so I think in that case, you've got to be more active in the way you go about it. Yeah. Now maybe this whole kind of like, social media explosion, maybe that's the way, the compensatory mechanism by which people can kind of make up for that shortfall is by, whether it's kind of WhatsApp chats or whatever it is, yeah. Or I don't know. I mean, maybe we'll get to the point where we'll have avatars in AI generated rooms, and there'll be an AI generated canteen in which your avatar goes and sits down and has lunch sitting next to other people's avatars, and you have a general discussion that way.
That sounds that sounds a bit, yeah. That sounds a bit, I don't know.
Doable. It's doable.
You think so?
Yeah. I think it's doable. Absolutely. Why wouldn't you have an avatar?
I know that some people have got. I know a couple of people that have got avatars actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, but creating a situation where everybody's going to lunch together.
Well, yeah. But you could, it's essentially just be like having a almost like a WhatsApp chat group. But you've got a big kind of mocked up canteen area, and you can go and sit down. Yeah, and you can choose who you sit next to, and you can talk in the group or one on one. I think there's technology is allowed for work from home. Yeah, technology is allowed for work from home, and is that it provided a great flexibility, which is wonderful for a lot of people. But then I think technology can also provide a solution to some of the kind of disadvantages of working from home. And I think something like this is a possibility. I'm sure there's people a lot cleverer than me that can come up with other things. Yeah.
A networking avatar. There you go.
Yeah.
It's a future, I think. It is. I think it would be. Crazy as it sounds, I think it would be the future. Yes. So I'm going to wrap things up.
Yeah, lovely to talk to you.
Yep. I'm going to ask you maybe one final question. If you could turn back time, what piece of advice would you give your younger self?
Probably get as close to the operations as you can earlier in your career. I was quite lucky, but I was on the environmental side in Aberdeen. I was working on a Forties pipeline expansion. So I was seeing the project side a lot. I didn't, because of helicopter space and bed space and everything, I didn't really get out much offshore. And I think that was one of my regrets, that I didn't use that opportunity being here in Aberdeen as a young professional of getting offshore a little bit more, getting out to the operations, because I think it's easier to do it when you're younger and you're lower down the totem pole in terms of grade and salary and everything else. If you can get as close to the wellhead as possible for at that stage of your career, and I think that's really beneficial.
I think so too. I do think so too. So that's all the questions I have today. I would like to thank Stephen for your time. That brings us to the end of another episode. Thanks for listening, and see you next week. That brings us to the end of another episode. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, I'd like to gently encourage you to leave a 5-star rating wherever you listen to podcasts, and share the show with another person. You can also follow me on LinkedIn or via my website, www.michellefraserconsultancy.com. Thanks again for listening, and see you next week.